Hello everybody, and welcome to my first attempt at a YouTube video here in my shop. For this first episode, I've been asked a lot about how I have been able to make these epoxy tables. They've become really popular in the woodworking community. Basically, they take live edge materials, pour epoxies, they'll put pigments in them to make it have really cool light and color effects. Epoxy is a great material to work with. It kind of has some nuances to it, and we'll work through some of the lessons that I've learned in my experiences. But like I said, for this episode, let's get started with how to build a basic form. What we start out with is a material that's called melamine. So melamine you can pick up at a Home Depot in your local area or any construction supply. And basically what you're looking for is a material that is non-porous, slick surface. So you can see that this material, this melamine, has got this white surface. What this does for you is the epoxy won't bond to that surface as easily. If you look at the end grain, or what is I guess considered the end grain of this material, it's just basically a compression board, and then it's got a veneer of the white material on it. Comes in a 4x8 sheet at Home Depot, or you can buy it in smaller variations. Then you're going to be paying for the cost of the cut, so I always like to go with the 4x8 sheets. And then you just need to figure out your dimensions. What are you looking for in a table? So for my first form, I was looking to do a coffee table. Started off with something simple, not too small, something that's usable. And I ended up going with a piece of 40 by 24 inch to make my first tabletop. So first thing you do, I'm not going to belabor it, but you take the 4x8 sheet and you measure out your pieces. You want to make sure, first of all, that if you're going by 40 by 24, that your bottom piece is 40 by 24. And then we'll worry about the side rails later. So I took my 4x8 sheet, real simply, cut it into 40 by 24 dimensional flat piece. From there, I had to look at my stock materials. So I've got quite a few slabs of maple. The slabs of maple that I've got are approximately 3 inches thick. So for your sides of your form, you want to make sure that you are taking into consideration any bow, any maximum thickness of what your material is, because ultimately what you don't want to run into when you're making your sides of your form is that your material is going to stick above that side form. So with these being approximately 2.5 to 3 inches thick on this material, and this is just a scrap leftover piece that I had laying around the shop, I wanted to make sure that my form sides were at least 3 inches. You want to consider the thickness of your bottom material and your height, and you want to make sure that you've got a side that's going to be, in my opinion, at least 1/2 inch higher than what you want the highest surface of your table to be. In this first form, I decided to go with 3 inch pieces. So these are 3 inch pieces, 3 inches wide, and the other material length for the ends, I made sure that they were exactly that 24 inches that I needed. And then obviously for the sides need to have that overlap so that once you're attached on the end, you're overlapping here. And I'll show you guys why that's important. You'll see that when you put these pieces together, you're going to want to have a snug fit in the corners, because in the end, you're going to need to caulk each of your seams so that it gives you a nice nice sealed form for you to lay your pieces in. Once you've got your pieces ripped to the appropriate sizes that you need, then it's a real simple process of, in order to not blow out the sides of the melamine, because again, you want to have that non-porous surface so the epoxy won't adhere to it and make a mess of your end project where you have to either cut off or route off with a hogging bit any of that extra material. You want to keep from having blowouts, so on your holes you want to pre-drill those holes so that everything lines up with the ends of the material, and when it goes in you don't have to worry about any of those blowouts occurring. So let's move on. One note before we get started on putting the materials together: if you're expecting to be able to use this form multiple times for multiple tabletops, one thing that I do recommend is that you mark each of your side pieces with a number, letter, shape. If you're into Lucky Charms, you can do horseshoes, hearts and diamonds, whatever tickles your fancy. But what you want to do is make sure that your side form has got a number on it, as well as the bottom of your piece. That way, when you go to take the form apart, where your holes line up for where you put the holes in initially, that will continue to use those same holes. One problem that I find with melamine, and it being a compression board, is that if you continue to put more and more holes in, especially if those holes are in proximity to other holes that you put in the past, it tends to break the material down and your forms aren't going to last nearly as long. There, that was pretty quick and easy. So you've got your form completely together. When it's together, a couple of things that you want to pay careful attention to is you want to make sure that you try to make all of your corners at right angles. I know this should go without saying, but you also want to make sure that all of your sides are plumb. You can use a speed square for that, or tri-square, anything that will give you that relative relation from the bottom to the sides so that you ensure that you've got the nice square angles. The next step in the process is that you got to make sure that you've got the right materials to prep your form. Now, I said earlier that the melamine is not a porous material. It won't suck in the epoxy and create a great adhesion. One thing that I like to make sure that I do, just to ensure that I'm going to be able to remove the mold at the end, is I use a silicone spray release agent. I did a bunch of research and by and large found a lot of as many different opinions as there are different products out there. So what I've got is something I picked up on Amazon, came in the mail in a couple of days' time, and it was pretty inexpensive, and it's by Spray Away. It's in this orange container, and it's just called silicone spray. Works phenomenally, and what you do with this is you put it on kind of like a cooking spray. So you spray the inside of your form so that you cover everything. I would err on the side of too much rather than too little, because obviously if you've got a spot that you miss, then you run the risk that your mold is going to get permanently adhered to the epoxy and it's not going to come off. You're going to have to destroy your form in order to save your project. The other big prep material that I had to go get a hold of was a silicone caulk. So again, just went through and got something that was 30 minutes rain ready because you are going to be pouring a liquid over top of this. So within 30 minutes time, you're ready to pour your epoxy. And it adheres to more surfaces is what the label claims: woods, concrete, metals, and vinyl. So I was pretty confident that this stuff was going to adhere to the edges of my project. So without further ado, that's the next step. We'll move into future episodes where I'll actually get into cutting the pieces and putting them in place. We'll talk about pouring and what's important to consider, what's less important to consider that you'll hear a lot of gossip online about, but that I find is not an issue. So looking forward to a couple more episodes as we move into building the next tabletop for the shop. And here's a preview of what we're looking at for the next couple of episodes. Here's my stack of maple. You can see I've already chalked out some roughs on what I might want to do for the countertop. There's a cutoff from the last table that I made that you'll see pictures throughout our episodes on. And just accentuating some of the spots, like this knot that you can see up here. As we continue down, you see almost this burl effect along the outer edge of the bark. There's a nice split where it looks like the tree might have grown into two sections at one point. And I really enjoy how maple spalts after it sits for a bit. You can see that color pattern. So come back and join us.